leaving DC, they're leaving Philadelphia even. They're looking for more outdoor space. They're looking for waterfronts. They're looking for places that really make them think about places like Sunbury, consider places even further west than that. So I'd love to hear maybe some questions or start some conversation, but we see places like the Tryon Equestrian Center in North Carolina actually be the center of commerce, be the reason why people are visiting town. So, and the reason why some people in town are able to be activated in service to those industries, whether that's with jobs or with entrepreneurship opportunities. So we really imagine a world where Main Street would be revitalized and activated around arts and culture and, things that we've seen work before when we actually bring an industry like equine sports or equine life in general and center that in Sunbury. So it's not bringing it to the region. There are people who own horses. They just don't have places where they have, a urban area where they have jumping facilities and different things like that. So it seems like an opportunity that would kind of go well together with the strategic plan for the city.
Mr. Rose, this is Joe Eister. Your company that you work for,
Yes.
do you come out and look for sites to develop, make recommendations of what type of activities you would think would be appropriate for those locations? Help me out exactly how this partnership is going to work.
Right. So our work is vertically integrated. We are we're looking at the plans that exist for place, having conversations and interviews, not just with the council, but with the neighbors around those spaces that we're imagining. And we're bringing recommendations to the floor for whatever zoning changes need to happen or any shifts or amendments need to happen. We're getting permission from these municipalities to do things like plant trees, to do the soil testing. We're doing the work. We're an urban design firm, so we don't just make the plan. I mean, usually most municipalities have plans. We build from the plan and allow for an activation strategy to happen from the plans that already exist. We do that in partnership with the municipality, and we see things through to the end. We are bringing in partners to do any parts that we're not doing, whether that is, like the compost component. We are seeing what the city's thinking is around compost and how we can align the design strategy for what we're doing with what the existing plans are. What do the young people want to do? Are they interested in equestrian life? And how can we bring them in? How are the seniors, which I hear is almost a little under 50% of the population, maybe 40% of the population. How can we get them doing therapeutic riding? What are their interests? Here in Philadelphia, we see that just feeding the horses and just sitting out and watching, just the horses moving through the space is therapeutic for some of our elders, for some of our young people. So designing the environment so that is able to happen, so that people are not stuck inside of their homes. I know with a lot of the shutdowns, we see a lot of people that feel like they can't come out at all, which isn't really completely the case. So as we normalize people being outside, we want to design with the trauma really and some of the things that have come from the news of this coronavirus thing. We're designing with those things in mind, and then we're activating the design. So we would work together with this municipality. I know Jody told me that you all have some folks working on fundraising. It would be a true partnership, where some of this multimodal funding would be sought after, so that some of the improvements to the streetscapes that need to be made, some of the tree planting, could be done through the municipality and designed through Sally Blagg. So it's I hope that helps to kind of crystallize things a little bit.
Can you talk about any kind of a fee?
That's what I'm getting to. The funding sources, where is the municipalities doing the funding to your company?
Say that one more time. You said the funding sources.
Yeah, the funding sources,
Right.
how's these projects being funded? And even your time that you're spending, it's being funded through us or a grant, or you funded through the state of Pennsylvania? Help me out.
Right. So the design work, the time and energy that we're putting into the work that we're doing will be funded internally. Our return on investment will be when the project is working for all of us. The cost of soil testing, of soil remediation, of different things like that will be the partnership where government has a stronger arm, because there are a lot of resources that exist. And we've had conversations with the Department of Community and Economic Development. There's a lot of resources that exist exclusively for municipalities that are not available to for-profit businesses that would be activated. So the media elements, us doing all the marketing and all of those, the design work, the streetscapes, all of those things would be funded in-house. But where some of that rubber hits the road of actually like buying trees, the city, the municipality, the parks, parks and public property, and really the person that works on fundraising for the city. I know you all just hired someone to do writing for grants. There are endless grants on the state, local, and federal level that exist for that, and that's going to expand because of what I was saying about a lot of people moving out of big cities. So now is the time for smaller cities and small towns. And I know the president and a lot of the people working on the federal level understand that, and they are starting to look to regions like the Susquehanna River Valley and want to see the projects. They want to see the ideas so that they can invest in those concepts.
So what type of fee would you charge the city for this then? Nothing.
The city wouldn't be charged for it. What I'm hoping is that the city would be a partner in seeing to it so that we don't have any barriers to making it happen. You understand what I mean? Any zoning challenges, any streetscape suggestions that we would need to activate. The biggest challenge for us in the past is when municipalities have plans on the table, but maybe they're not ready to activate the plan. So we're ready to activate a plan around equine life that's going to turn into economic development for the entire region. And we want to be able to track that, show what that looks like, build an education component around it so that folks that are in the school district, young people can be educated around horse care, different things like that. I don't know if you know this, but this is $1 million industry, like just taking care of horses. We're not even talking about racing. We're not even talking about all the Olympic sports that young people could be activated in and still live in Sunbury. So the idea, and then the arts, which is an entire other area where I know that the Y and some other entities in the city are already activated, and putting that together with equestrian life really has great potential economically. So there's not really I wouldn't say there's a cost, and any cost that would come up would be a conversation. It wouldn't be like, all right, I'm going to bill you and get back to us when you can. That's not our interest. Our interest is in seeing that region thrive, and do that through first activating the people that already live there around equine life and sports, and get them out and get them excited, and then bringing in some other folks from the outside to open restaurants, to have shops and stores, maybe a boutique hotel, or some waterfront sports. And I know that Jody talks about the 250th anniversary, like some festivals and different things that would happen around an already existing kind of blood flow that is happening in Sunbury.
So just want to point out that I met David Rose over a year ago at Pennsylvania Downtown Conference. And so he was given a seminar, or he was part of a panel. And I just asked him a question, and then afterwards got to speak with him and showed him where Sunbury was on the map. And he started just looking at it going, you have a lot of assets here with the river, the rural areas all around your city. It's a beautiful, you know, I look at Google Maps and you see it, the downtown, and it's like, there are people that are looking for places like this to come to invest in, to settle down in, like maybe they're leaving in a more urban area. And that perhaps because of COVID, there is more thought, people living in these more densely populated areas, that we might be seeing a migration to more rural areas. And I think his point is to position Sunbury in such a way as to be able to receive them, be attracted to those types of entities. So he's been here several times. We've been walking downtown. We've walked across the 10th Street Bridge and walked over in the old city dump area. When you saw that, you know, there's a nice natural area there, needs maybe some remediation, but his resources and his network, he has those network connections to bring investors in that are interested in doing those kinds of things. He's been here, and we told him all about the 250th anniversary, the history of Sunbury, the indigenous history of Sunbury as well. And so it's building on the history and culture that we already have, the rivers town culture, and then trying to capitalize on that, leverage what we already have, and try to take advantage of what might be an opportunity as we rebuild out of the economic development out of COVID. Is that a good kind of summary, David?
Yeah, I would say I want to push past this notion that people maybe, because I really want to punctuate the point that people are moving out of big cities in droves. It's not a maybe. You know, people are traumatized by the narrative of coronavirus. People are traumatized by their businesses being shut down in New York City when you already have to pay 7 times the amount of rent that you would have to pay in Sunbury. People are traumatized. People have worked their whole lives, built savings, opened a business to have it shut down for a year, and they're done. There's not like well, maybe we can survive another year. Or, oh, I think our government in New York City or in Philadelphia is going to give us some sort of a handout in order for us to survive for a little bit longer. People are done. They're done. So they are thinking, and I'm on these calls all the time. I mean, I sit on a council for economic development in the Mississippi River Valley, and they're planning for it. They're like, you know, they're ready to accept more businesses, to receive more people coming to that area. The same thing in the Shenandoah Valley. The same is really big in the South. So in Florida, in Virginia, in North Carolina, in Tennessee. I'm sorry to say it like this, but the North is bleeding at this point, you know, and people are trying to get out of that. What do they call it? The Northeastern Corridor, like that Boston to DC, and they want more space, they want more peace of mind, and they see that happening where the environment is rich, where there's water, where they can see the sky at night, where they can run their business without running their mental and emotional well-being into the ground. I believe that the average rental prices that I was seeing along the commercial strip, the main commercial strip, seem to be maybe around $800 to $1,500, maybe. Am I off in that?
For the commercial spaces, you mean?
Yeah.
You talking about on across the river from?
No, here on Market Street.
No, on Market Street.
Yes,
There's some buildings for sale. There's some buildings for rent. These people that are coming that have the resources, they've been selling this stuff online. They'd like to open an art store. Now we're not even talking about we're talking about economic development now, I know, but if I may, they would have no problem if the city created a program that said, if you open your business here and promise to be here for 5 years and at least, and we will actually maybe incentivize you getting a house or help you to find a house. That's all people would need to move. Oh, you're telling me I can get a house and I can open my business, and well, most of my sales are online anyway. I don't really, like I just want to have a storefront. People are looking for that, and I know that there was some conversation that Jody was telling me about with regards to an assessment of all of the commercial properties along the commercial corridor, and I know there's some economic development conversation happening already, and I know we're off topic, but I'm just saying to you all, while I have your attention, that the interest exists, that folks in our networks are ready, and they're looking to us to find out where some of those places are, where they could be and should be considering. So I'm on one side telling people, hold on, the conversations are happening now, so that we can design the reality that people are looking for. And on the other side, I'm in conversations with folks like yourself, talking about reimagining your spaces so that it's ready for all of these people that want to raise their families someplace other than, the big bad city, Harrisburg or whatever.
You have been in Sunbury and you looked at the landfill site.
I've seen the landfill. Yes, I've seen the landfill as well as the brownfields on the north side of the city. And
That's a county-owned site. The north brownfield's a county-owned site.
okay.
5 years ago, we were looking at maybe putting some solar fields over there. And at that time, DCED, we met with them in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is the district head. And they said that they have no record of any landfill being there. So if we find anything, we're supposed to remove it, okay? Whatever. Well, I don't know if anything's changed or not. But what makes you think, and I don't mean this negatively, that the equine process would work? Because the population here isn't really big. The town has under 10,000 people in it, and the rural areas have basically there are areas that have this set up already within, like, say, 10, 15 miles of the city.
Right.
Where they do the boarding, the training, the shows and stuff like that.
Right.
Yes, with the equine.
Right. So at the core of our considerations is the people that live in Sunbury first. The young people that live in Sunbury, the older people that live in Sunbury, building a love for equestrian life inside of Sunbury, for the people in Sunbury, and then building a bridge from what we build in Sunbury for Sunbury to that surrounding community. So it's like designing your house, knowing that we're designing it for you, but we know that at some point you're going to have guests, so we are connected to those guests. We're connected to the broader reality of the fact that some people may want to move and be your neighbors. So not only are we building this equine piece, we've seen it work, right? We've seen in the middle of North Philadelphia, we're working with a group in North Philadelphia, which is an underinvested in section of the city of Philadelphia. They have a equestrian center, or they have a riding center rather, called the Fletcher Street Riding Club, that a movie was just made after with Idris Elba and some other folks. It's called Concrete Cowboys. What that film is going to do, and there's a documentary being we connected them with a group that's going to do a documentary on them. that is going to, they for almost 100 years, they've been training young people on how to, take care of horses, how to ride them. Some of those young people have gone on, some of them were featured in that film. Some of them have gone on to work at stables, to play polo, to do other things in that area that has economic, like they're making money from it. They were able to get into jobs and careers and work in that field. But now we're in conversation with the municipality about creating a world-class riding center in the middle of this section of the city that's going to draw, that's not only going to continue the tradition of educating young people and the community around horses, but it's also going to be an economic draw, be an anchor, as they say. So what makes me think that it'll work is that I've seen it work, and that I'm a part of it working in some other places now. And those places, it's like it already existed and we're trying to mold it into something that works maybe more efficiently. Here, that's not the case. Here, we're building it. So we can build it so that we can design the reality so that it works perfectly for what the city's goals are, what the county's goals are, and what some of the equestrian community right around Sunbury is already knows will work for them. So there are some folks that are outside of the city that already want to do something in an urbanized area, but they don't have an urbanized area to connect to.
So
Right.
you say you have interested people right now that would possibly be interested in doing that in Sunbury?
I'm saying that they would want to connect to a urbanized equine center. You understand what I'm saying? How can I put that better?
All right, I guess the question is, you feel that Sunbury is a viable location for this to happen?
Absolutely. I think that Sunbury is a very important location for it to happen. But also it would allow for us to have a layered case for economic development. It's not just the waterfront. It's not just the commercial district. It's not just that, it's the fact that if we do this right, so I don't know how Weiss has a headquarters in Sunbury, correct?
They originated in Sunbury, yes, sir.
Right. So this is where I'm going with it. Whole Foods sources large portions of their produce from small local farmers. The compost that would be generated in Sunbury, right? If we work this project correctly, I'm talking about once it's scaled up a little bit and we're able to have maybe multiple nodes across the city, have a conversation with the county about the brownfields, really use some of the compost that we're generating to improve a street tree program, really imagine some of the fields that are in the city that are not populated with housing, to have that as like some urban farming. We can see a world where Weiss is actually tied in, at least the local stores, and getting some of its produce from urban farmed land that's right in the city. And what that does is it places Sunbury quite literally on the map as a best practice. Like, and I know these words sound like, okay, well, who cares? Like, you're the only one in the country that's doing this type of thing. But it matters a lot because that's where investment comes, right? That's where people are willing to move to town. People are willing to do movies. And then if you have your zoning set up correctly, you can actually make money from those films that are being shot in the area, more festivals. That we're moving in this direction where a lot of people want to live this holistic lifestyle. They will pay premiums to live a more holistic lifestyle. They want fresh produce. They want to ride horses instead of walking, or instead of driving a car. They want to be able to take a trail ride. And the people that want that are willing to pay a little bit more. They pay their taxes on time. They would be the people that build it, like I was saying earlier, that put their businesses in Sunbury. They'll be the people that buy the homes, that fix those homes up. They will repopulate the space. So there's not just a potential. This is already true in Tryon. Like Tryon has had their equestrian center for a while now, and Tryon, the city, downtown is booming. I mean, before COVID, of course. I mean, like some businesses have went away. But what Tryon doesn't have that you all have, and what a lot of cities don't have that you all have, is this waterfront. This waterfront that has indigenous history, that has a history that is unparalleled. And we're in conversations with the Commonwealth about trail rides that cut across larger swaths of land, meaning like some people want to ride from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. Like they want to get on the horse and they want to ride and camp here and then ride a little bit more and, go boating and then like they want to do more with their time. People don't want to just work 9 to 5 anymore. That culture is quickly shifting as some of these younger people are getting into the age where they want to raise families.
I believe in the horseback riding aspect of this, especially with the Veterans Affairs Association. They use it a lot with their veterans. But what about the concerns regarding, didn't you say the 3rd Street corridor along the railroad tracks?
3rd Street corridor, right?
Yes. What about all the trains coming through? The city's only about a mile and a half, and they blow their horns through the entire city right there.
Right. So my thought was the 3rd Street corridor because of its connectivity. How looking at the old brownfields, how it literally the property bends along the rails and then will take you all the way behind Weiss's to the break wall that'll literally allow you to go over. I'm thinking now, I'm projecting my design, my design brain, I guess. But along the break wall and over the bridge and into the property that was the sanitation space, the dump. I think about that loop, but I also think about a loop that takes you along 3rd Street and then back along Front Street. Where some resources are required is in redesigning 3rd Street and imagining 3rd Street as almost like a multimodal boulevard where people can bike 3rd Street. There's trains down 3rd Street. There's a trail that's deliberately for horse riding that maybe has gravel or dirt down 3rd Street. There's a deliberate redesign of 3rd Street that imagines it with the trains, with the old train hub being activated in a particular way, with us thinking about busing into the city. These are with us considering downtown and the places that 3rd Street cuts across downtown, right? There's some buildings, 2 buildings diagonally across the street from one another that are available or are for rentable. All of these spaces and all of this that comes together allows for us to reimagine a thoroughfare that's truly multimodal: rail, biking, walking, horseback riding, and that is a tree-lined street that is potentially closed off to vehicles, just that one block, and that really allows for people to be living on the streets, like people to be a active thoroughfare, and connecting that thoroughfare to Main Street, and allowing for that energy to kind of continue to blocks like Front Street and some other blocks kind of as time goes on, really allows us to reimagine a greener city, imagine a city where people are walking, like people are healthy. Part of this whole coronavirus narrative is that some people were not well in the first place. Some people were already not eating well. Some people already had pre-existing conditions. And this coronavirus thing attached itself to what was already happening. If we can improve the health conditions for the young people, but also particularly for our older folks, for our veterans, people would be excited about Sunbury, and not that they aren't already, but I'm saying they would continue to be excited about Sunbury. And when people get excited about things, they usually bring out their wallets, and they're more willing to open their business. They're more willing to make investments. They're more willing to just participate in the civic life of cities.
Well, I don't know about horses on 3rd Street when a train comes by. You gotta have a pretty well-trained horse who will not bolt when the train comes by and blows its whistle. So I'm not so sure about that, but I think there may be pathways in around the city. Now, I would think of, Dave, you remember the dike that's along Shamokin Creek. So the bridge goes from the dike over to what used to be the city dump. But that dike goes all the way, from Front Street, where behind Wise's, all the way around to the backside, east side of the city. There's also some land back in that area on either side of Shamokin Creek that's undeveloped, just for some trail riding kind of thing. I don't know how, I can't quite visualize how you cross the city from the Celotex, the North Brownfield property, all the way down to the other side of Shamokin Creek, but you're the design guy, so.
Maybe Front Street. I mean, that was just a thought because of the closeness of the brownfields but I mean, that's just like a rough thought. I'd have to be on the ground and really have an assessment of that. And yes, I completely agree with you with the train. But I mean, that entire framing was just to have y'all really think about multimodal. I mean, I know the mayor does some work with the Commonwealth. There's tons of funding now for people just getting out, for multimodal transportation, for people leaving their cars at home and biking and jogging and walking, and to add this element of horse trail riding to the idea of multimodal could really be something that sets Sunbury apart,
I'm really kind of interested in what you said about the different things working together. For instance, you have the horse program going on, which is contributing to a composting program, which I know that the street supervisor, Steve, was talking about wanting to start a city composting pile anyway. And then being able to distribute that to residents who might want to do backyard gardens where they produce their own vegetables, and maybe they're able to sell some in the local farmers market, right, or to Wise's. And then that being a basis for either people desiring to live here or staying here, or downtown development, commercial development around that increase in activity, so that it's not just pick one thing and do just one thing, but actually have a constellation of things that are related to one another and support one another. That's an interesting concept to me.
Right. I mean, it's the biggest thing, and I know, Jim, like you're just thinking about the numbers, right? It's traceable. It's traceable. We can talk about this project. You all can say, you know what, let's try it out, right? And we can look at the numbers as they exist, the health numbers, the education numbers. We can look at all the numbers, right? Then we can, year 1, look at the numbers again. Year 2, look at the numbers again, and we can watch an improvement in health and wellness. We can interview people. You understand what I'm saying? We can track a change over time in the actual health and well-being of the people living in Sunbury. Like I said, the city of Philadelphia has this urban agricultural program that exists on paper. They haven't really breathed, full life has not been breathed into it yet because of COVID, but people are ready though. So the city okaying, I'm talking about Sunbury, the city okaying a seed bank, right? Providing space for people around the city to, you know, get their like organic seeds or whatever from the city, their compost from the city, promoting that style of wellness. You know, really, we talked about along the waterfronts. We see some municipalities in ancient times, indigenous people, at least to the Carolinas that I know, would plant what they call food forests. So they wouldn't do this tract farming. They would plant trees and shrubs that all produce produce and fruits at different times of the year. And I see or imagine something like that being something that can happen along Front Street, with some training and with some education around that. So people can go apple picking on Front Street. People can, you know, go to a blackberry bush or a raspberry bush on Front Street. It's really good sun there. It's also a good thoroughfare where the trail riding could happen instead of on Third. The composting would help with that process of making that available as well. The city can actually make some funds from concessions along Front Street. You know, there's different ways that the municipality, as well as the people who live in the city, can have some return on this sort of an investment, you know.
Mr. Rose, running out of time here, but in the future, would you be willing to give us more information? We start coming out with some projects. Would you work with us?
Yeah, so I mean, typically, when we began the conversation, we were thinking about, so our clients are usually municipalities that we take on and we make economic development plans. With Sunbury, you know, I really took a liking to some of the things that Jody was talking about, and saw Sunbury as a space that had a lot of potential. If the municipality wanted Sally Blagg to come on and really just analyze some of the things that are going on, and maybe find some funding together for an intense economic development survey and strategy, I would really be glad to do that. I think that actually is something that's much needed, because development could happen, but a lot of times in a lot of cities, we see development happen without the municipality, right? The guy with a bunch of money comes in, buys this building, has this idea that may not be in alignment with what the council wants, may not be in alignment with the neighbors want, but because they have the resources to do it, they just do it. So making like a strategy that builds on the strategic plan that you all already have, is something that I'm that's what I'm here for. Like I'm open to that. I really see us starting to do some soil testing on the sanitation site, the old sanitation site. I really see us having conversations with the county about the brownfield site so that we can do some soil testing there, and really imagining together, maybe with some folks that are in the equestrian, deep in the, like already spending money, like already doing work in equestrian life in the region, and seeing how we can connect them to Sunbury in a way that says, before we even build this, we know that you will use it. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
Like we could, I mean, I'm down, I mean, that is what I think is smart. That's smart development. Is like, we already know, I mean, I already know that people will use that waterfront, you know, it's just that we'd have to design something there, which would cost some funds. We'd have to find the funding to do that. And then we can have a waterfront life as well, you know, so then you'd have equestrian life, you'd have waterfront life. You already have this wonderful, wonderful view of the sky. I know that sounds silly, but I'm from Brooklyn originally. So, you know, we don't get much view of the sky there in New York City, but being in Philadelphia, I get a little more sky. But when I spend the night at the bed and breakfast downtown in Sunbury, it's amazing just to be able to look up at the stars. It's that alone is therapeutic. So just think about that. Consider that you all living there for the length of time that you have, there's some kind of bias there, right? Y'all know what you know because you've been there. Folks that are new to those places really fall in love with them because they're not used to that all the time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing. That's something that's worth, for lack of a better word, worth capitalizing on a little bit.
So what would you recommend be our next step then?
Well, really, I'd like to do an assessment. I'd like us to have some conversation about how we can do an assessment of the property on that we're talking about. Do some soil testing, get in and do an assessment of isolating, because I know I said a lot of things, but isolating things out so there's not all of this stuff at once. And really do an assessment of what that would look like, what it would cost to get it to where we needed to be, what permissions would need to happen on the city level, and how we may be able to work on that bridge, right, piece, and move that in a direction where we can start to redevelop that sooner than later. We have people right now, if we were to design that space and see that bridge fixed, where we can facilitate some camping and outdoor, like we're really tied into the indigenous populations in Pennsylvania, at least in Philadelphia and New York and DC. And a lot of those people just want to escape sometimes. So activating that space in the beginning before we even get to horses, right? As a space where people can do some camping, can just be away from the city and see the sky, for it to be designed in that type of way, rather, that builds on the indigenous history of that space of Sunbury. Seems like something that can happen now. It just requires for us to be in some level of lockstep. So if we were able to come out, you all have to make the decisions that you'd want to make about Sally Blagg having permission to long-term permission to activate that space, and we'd activate it. I mean, we'd test it. We would do everything we need to do to make sure that it's, a place where people can be. But just bringing people in is something that especially post-COVID, like, I mean, in the spring, like right now, people are still in the house, right? Once things start to normalize, by the time we get to spring, summer, people are going to want to go out and away from the big city. This is where some of that conversation about the 250th anniversary came into play, where we were talking with Jody. Maybe she could speak to this a little bit, but about planning that festival in a way that almost intentionally has artists and artisans and designers, and it activates the space in a way that Sunbury may not have seen before. In this street festival, big street festival, people coming from out of town kind of way. And I think that space over there provides a nice space for people to do, even if it's just some drumming and some dancing and some folk music and camping and different things like that. So the first order of business in my mind would be testing the soil, getting the proper permissions we need from the municipality, from you all, engaging in some level of an agreement, and moving and just making it happen, in a way that you see everything that we're going to do. Like, we're not just rogue, doing things however we want, but just laying out a strategy so that you all are saying, okay, yes to this, yes to this. I have some questions about this part, but let's build this pathway together. It seems like the biggest barrier is, quite literally almost, is the bridge and how that will be repaired. So that's what I have in mind.
All right, so I'll just follow up with you, David, and talk to the council. They can consider about those next steps, and then I will be back in touch and let you know, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Stay
Have a good
safe.
evening.
Bye now.